Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be diving into the life and work of, well, I think we can all agree, a true icon, Albert Einstein. We've got a pretty awesome YouTube documentary to pull from the people profiles and, of course, his Wikipedia page, because who doesn't love a good Wikipedia rabbit hole, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's fascinating is we're not just going to be, listing off his accomplishments and all that, but we're going to kind of uncover how Einstein's personal life, his experiences, his values really all came together to shape, his incredible journey.
Exactly. Exactly. We're going way beyond EMC2 here. We're going to try to understand who he was as a person, what made him tick, and how his work still impacts us today, in so many ways.
Yeah, and I think by understanding the man behind the science, you can actually gain a much deeper appreciation for the significance of his discoveries, and you might even find some surprising ways that, they connect to your own life.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's rewind all the way back to the beginning. Einstein's early life, um, it's a bit unconventional, wouldn't you
Yeah.
say?
Definitely. Yeah. He was born in Germany in 1879, but his family moved around a lot, living in Germany, Italy, and Switzerland. And even as a young boy, his exceptional abilities in math and science were, they were obvious. The documentary even mentions that he taught himself algebra and Euclidean geometry by the age of 12.
12. I was still trying to figure out fractions at that age. But here's the thing. He wasn't just a math whiz, you know what I mean? He was fascinated by philosophy, too. Reading works by Kant and other, heavy hitters, while most kids were, I don't know, reading comic books probably.
Right. And that early exposure to such diverse fields of thought, it's really crucial to understanding his intellectual development. It shows that his genius wasn't just, confined to one area. He was a true polymath, constantly seeking knowledge from every direction.
And that independent thinking really shows up even in his teenage years. I mean, how many 16-year-olds just up and renounce their citizenship?
Yeah, that's right. He renounced his German citizenship to avoid mandatory military service. And this wasn't just, teenage rebellion. It was a bold statement against war and violence, showing his early pacifist leanings and his willingness to stand up for what he believed in. This early act of defiance, it really shows you the kind of independent thinker Einstein was, already challenging authority and standing up for his beliefs, a trait that would really, define his entire life.
He definitely marched to the beat of his own drum.
Okay.
Now, even with his obvious brilliance, his path to higher education wasn't exactly, a walk in the park.
Yeah.
He actually failed the entrance exam for the Swiss Federal Polytechnic School in Zurich on his first attempt.
And this is a great example of how even geniuses, face setbacks. He was just too young at the time, but his determination, it really pushed him to persevere. The following year, he passed the Swiss Matura, which is like a high school equivalency exam, and finally got into the Polytechnic at 17 to study his true passions, physics and mathematics.
So picture this, 1905. Einstein is 26 years old, working at the Swiss Patent Office, and boom. He publishes not one, not two, but four groundbreaking scientific papers. It's been called his miracle year, and for good reason.
Yeah, 1905 it really is a landmark year in the history of science.
hmm
These papers, and keep in mind they were written while he was essentially a part-time scientist, completely revolutionized our understanding of the universe.
It's almost unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
Working a day job and simultaneously reshaping the landscape of physics. Okay, break it down for us. What were these four papers all about?
Okay, so the first one explained the photoelectric effect, which this actually later won him the Nobel Prize in physics. And this paper was revolutionary because it proposed that light, which up until then was thought to travel only in waves, also acts like a stream of particles called photons.
Wow, I never realized that something as commonplace as automatic doors is based on such a fundamental discovery about the nature of light. That's fascinating. What about the second paper?
All right, so the second paper tackled Brownian motion, it's basically the seemingly random movement of particles suspended in a fluid. And Einstein's work, what it did was it provided solid evidence for the existence of atoms and molecules, which were actually, believe it or not, still being debated at the time.
So he not only revolutionized our understanding of light, but also helped to solidify one of the most fundamental concepts in chemistry. Incredible. What else was he cooking up that year?
Okay, so next up was special relativity. And this one, it challenged Newtonian physics and completely changed our understanding of space, time, and gravity. I know it sounds complicated, but he had this brilliant way of using thought experiments to make these abstract ideas more tangible.
You're talking about like the famous thought experiment with the clock tower and the streetcar, right?
Yeah, exactly. He imagined himself on a streetcar moving at the speed of light looking up at a clock tower. And he realized that time would appear to stop on the clock tower from his perspective. So this thought experiment, it helped him grasp the concept of time dilation. Time isn't absolute, but it's relative to the observer's frame of reference. And it was a mind-bending idea that had, huge implications for physics.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how these seemingly abstract theories actually have, real world implications.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, the fourth paper, this is the one that gave us the iconic equation EMC2. It describes the relationship between mass and energy, suggesting that even a tiny amount of mass can be converted into a tremendous amount of energy.
And that, of course, led to the development of nuclear weapons,
Oh.
something that Einstein later deeply, deeply regretted.
Yeah, it definitely raises a lot of questions about the ethical implications of scientific discovery, something for us all to ponder.
That's a tough one. It makes you think about the ethical dilemmas scientists face, especially when their discoveries have, such far-reaching consequences. But let's get back to Einstein's incredible year. I mean, after 1905, his career took off like a rocket, right?
Well, not exactly. While those papers were revolutionary, it still took time for the scientific community to fully grasp their significance. It wasn't until 1908 that he finally landed a teaching position at the University of Bern. Before that, he was still working at the patent office.
That's wild. I mean, the genius behind these groundbreaking theories was initially overlooked by academia. It shows that even the most brilliant minds face challenges and rejection.
And it's a powerful reminder to never give up on your ideas, even if others don't immediately see their value.
So what came next for Einstein? He didn't exactly rest on his laurels after, the miracle years.
Oh, no, no. He was already working on what would become his most famous theory, general relativity.
Ah, yes, general relativity. That's
Yeah.
that's the one that explains gravity, right? Going beyond Newton's ideas and all that.
Exactly, yeah. Instead of thinking of gravity as a force, Einstein described it as a curvature of space-time caused by the presence of mass and energy.
Wait, space-time. So it's like the fabric of the universe itself is being warped.
Yeah, think of it this way. Imagine a bowling ball on a trampoline. It creates a dip, right? That's kind of like how mass warps space-time, and that warping, that's what we experience as gravity.
Okay, that's a really cool analogy. It's still a mind-blowing concept, but I'm starting to get it.
And what's even more amazing is that even before the theory was fully developed, it led him to predict incredible things about the universe. Things like black holes and gravitational waves. These things sound like they're straight out of science fiction.
I can only imagine what people must have thought at the time. Predicting things that wouldn't be observable for decades? That takes some serious intellectual courage.
He was a true visionary, pushing the boundaries of our understanding of the cosmos. And even though those predictions weren't immediately confirmed, general relativity still caused quite a stir in the scientific community. But it wasn't until 1919 that he became I guess you could say, like a global superstar?
Intriguing. What happened in 1919? Was it aliens? Was it time travel?
Not quite, but almost as exciting for the world of science. There was a total solar eclipse that year, and it gave astronomers the perfect opportunity to test one of general relativity's key predictions, the bending of light by gravity.
So they used the eclipse to see if light from distant stars was being bent by the sun's gravity, just like Einstein had predicted.
Exactly. A team led by British astronomer Sir Arthur Eddington, they made the observations, and guess what? They confirmed Einstein's predictions with, incredible accuracy.
I can just picture those headlines. Einstein right, Newton wrong. It must have been a landmark moment for science, not to mention, Einstein's career.
It was. The confirmation of general relativity during that solar eclipse, it launched Einstein into international fame. He became a global icon practically overnight, a symbol of scientific genius and a figure of, immense public fascination.
So from patent clerk to global icon in just a few short years, what a journey. But I'm guessing all that fame and recognition didn't change who he was at his core.
You're absolutely right. Einstein remained a committed pacifist throughout his life, even as his fame grew and he became more involved in global affairs. And speaking of global affairs, this was a tumultuous period in history. World War I had just ended, and Europe was in the midst of, major upheaval.
That's right. That's right. And those world events deeply influenced Einstein's, political and social views, leading him to become a vocal advocate for peace and international cooperation.
For example, during World War I, many prominent German academics signed the Manifesto of the 93, a declaration in support of Germany's war effort. It was a way of showing, national unity. But Einstein, he refused to sign it. Instead, he co-authored a counter-manifesto calling for peace and an end to the conflict.
So even when it was, risky to go against the grain, he held fast to his pacifist convictions. I'm really curious to learn more about this side of him, his activism, and how his ideas influence the world beyond science.
Me too. And we're going to do just that. But first, let's take a quick pause and come back to explore his incredible journey as a public figure. Welcome back. Before the pause, we were talking about how the confirmation of general relativity, it really made Einstein a global celebrity. Now let's dive into his life as a public figure, a role he navigated with, I think you could say, his signature blend of brilliance and strong principles.
Yeah, this is the part that I find so intriguing. We often think of scientists as being like laser focused on their research, kind of detached from the world around them. But Einstein wasn't like that at all. He was deeply engaged with the social and political issues of his time,
Yeah,
right?
he was. He definitely was. And his experiences during the World Wars, especially his complicated relationship with Germany, it really played a big role in shaping his worldview. Remember, he had renounced his German citizenship as a young man, to avoid military service. He was already opposed to war and violence.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, and I'm curious, how did his pacifism play out during, such turbulent times?
Well, his stance against war, it became even more pronounced during World War I. As I mentioned before, he refused to sign the Manifesto of the 93, which was basically a declaration of support for Germany's war effort, signed by, many prominent German intellectuals.
So even in the face of like intense nationalism, he stayed true to his beliefs.
Absolutely, yeah. He saw war as like a disease that plagued humanity, and he truly believed that international cooperation was the only path to lasting peace. He even co-authored a pacifist counter-manifesto calling for, a swift end to the fighting.
Wow. That takes a lot of courage, especially during, wartime.
Hmm.
So how did this commitment to peace, how did it manifest in his actions?
Well, after World War I, he became involved with the League of Nations, the
Mhm.
precursor to the United Nations. He served on their International Committee on Intellectual Cooperation, which focused on promoting dialogue and collaboration among, scholars and intellectuals from around the world.
That sounds like a perfect fit for him. He really seemed to embrace his role as a public intellectual, using his fame to champion the causes he believed in.
He definitely did. His influence extended, far beyond the scientific community. He became this powerful symbol of peace and intellectual freedom, a voice of reason in a world, increasingly divided by ideology and conflict.
But as we know, the rise of Nazism in the 1930s really darkened the horizon in Europe, forcing Einstein to flee Germany and seek refuge in the United States. I can't imagine what that experience must have been like for him.
It was a dark period for him, no doubt. He faced persecution and witnessed the horrors of the Nazi regime, firsthand, but it also solidified his commitment to social justice and human rights.
And it was during this time that he famously wrote to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, warning him about the potential for Germany to develop an atomic bomb. Right.
Yes, in 1939, along with other physicists, he alerted Roosevelt about the possibility of using nuclear fission to create a weapon of, unimaginable power. They urged the United States to start its own research program to counter this potential threat.
That's such a complex and controversial aspect of his legacy. Here's this lifelong pacifist essentially advocating for the development of, the most destructive weapon the world had ever seen.
It's important to understand the context here. Einstein, horrified by the atrocities of the Nazi regime, he believed that the only way to prevent a global catastrophe was for the Allied nations to have a deterrent of their own. And he later expressed, deep regret for his role in initiating the nuclear arms race. But at the time, he saw it as a necessary evil. It was
Yeah.
it was a heartbreaking dilemma, and it weighed on him heavily for the rest of his life.
It's a stark reminder that even the brightest minds can face, impossible choices, especially in times of war and global conflict. His story really makes you think about the heavy responsibility that comes with with scientific progress.
It does. It really does. His equation, EMC2, I mean, it opened the door to harnessing the immense power within the atom, but it also showed the potential for devastating consequences.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that scientific discoveries can have, both positive and negative impacts. And it's up to us as a society to grapple with those implications and ensure that knowledge is used for good. But even with the weight of the world on his shoulders, I mean, Einstein continued to push the boundaries of scientific thought, right?
He did, absolutely. And he didn't shy away from challenging his own ideas or engaging in, lively debates with other scientists. In fact, he wasn't always right.
Oh, right. This is where his famous quote comes in. God does not play dice with the universe.
Exactly. He had a hard time accepting the randomness and uncertainty inherent in quantum mechanics. He believed that there must be a deeper, more deterministic explanation for the universe, something beyond what quantum mechanics could offer at the time.
So even geniuses can have their, blind spots and struggle to accept new ideas that challenge their worldview. It makes them seem more human, don't you think?
It does. And it underscores that science is a constantly evolving process with new discoveries often challenging our current understanding. And Einstein's resistance to certain aspects of quantum mechanics ultimately led him to become, I guess you could say, somewhat isolated from the mainstream of modern physics in his later years.
But it also shows his deep commitment to seeking truth and understanding, even when it meant, questioning his own beliefs.
Yeah.
It's inspiring in a way.
Absolutely, yeah. Einstein's willingness to engage in these debates and challenge the status quo, I mean, it's part of what made him such a remarkable figure. His story is a testament to the beauty and challenges of scientific inquiry.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground from his groundbreaking discoveries to his complicated relationship with Germany, his activism, and even his disagreements with other physicists. But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to explore. His relationship with Zionism and his advocacy for a Jewish state.
That's right. Einstein's connection to Zionism, it was complex and it evolved over time. It wasn't a straightforward path. He wasn't always a strong supporter of the idea, but his views were deeply influenced by his personal experiences with anti-Semitism, particularly in the face of, rising Nazism.
It seems like a lot of his work and activism stemmed from a place of deep personal conviction. It's remarkable how his own identity and the events of his time, I mean, they intertwined with his intellectual pursuits.
It really is, and his views on Zionism are a perfect example of that. We'll delve deeper into that aspect of his life after a short pause.
All right, we're back and ready to unpack, I guess you could say, the final chapter of our Einstein deep dive. We've explored his scientific breakthroughs, his pacifism, his global fame, his clashes even with the scientific community. And now we're turning to, I think, a deeply personal aspect of his life.
Right.
Einstein and Zionism.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, Einstein's relationship with Zionism, it wasn't simple. It actually evolved quite a bit over time. Early on, he had, kind of mixed feelings about the idea of a Jewish state. He even expressed some concerns about, the potential for nationalism and conflict and all that.
Yeah, I'm struck by how deeply personal Einstein's connection to Zionism seems to have been. It wasn't just like a theoretical concept for him,
You're absolutely right. His perspective was shaped by his own experiences with anti-Semitism and the horrors he witnessed during, the rise of Nazism. As he saw the devastating consequences of hatred and intolerance, I mean, firsthand, he came to believe that a Jewish homeland was essential for the safety and security of the Jewish people.
So it was less about political ideology and more about a profound need for a safe haven.
Exactly, yeah. He saw it as a refuge for Jewish refugees fleeing persecution,
Yeah.
a place where Jewish culture and identity could thrive. And as the horrors of the Holocaust unfolded, he became, increasingly vocal in his support for Zionism, using his platform to advocate for the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine.
But wasn't that a time of intense conflict between Jews and Arabs in Palestine? I mean, did that factor into his perspective at all?
It did. While he advocated for a Jewish homeland, Einstein also believed in the importance of peaceful coexistence with the Arab population. He envisioned a future where Jews and Arabs could, live together in harmony, sharing the land and governing themselves democratically.
That sounds incredibly idealistic given the tensions that were I mean, that were already present at the time.
It was a hopeful vision, but sadly, those tensions only escalated in the years following, the establishment of Israel in 1948.
Did Einstein live to see the creation of Israel?
He did. He passed away in 1955, 7 years after Israel's independence. It's difficult to know what he would have thought about, the ongoing conflict and the complexities of the Israeli-Palestinian situation. But his commitment to peace and understanding it remained unwavering throughout his life.
It's a reminder that even the most brilliant minds grapple with finding solutions to deeply rooted conflicts, especially those, entangled with history, identity, and competing claims to land and resources. Einstein's views on Zionism, while rooted in his humanitarian ideals and desire for a Jewish haven, they also reflect the complexities and contradictions that arise when personal identity intersects with global
Yeah,
politics.
that's a great point, and it brings us back to one of the key themes we've explored throughout our deep dive into Einstein's life. The intricate connection between, the personal and the scientific, the individual and the global.
Yeah.
Einstein's scientific pursuits, his political activism, his stance on Zionism. I mean, they were all profoundly shaped by his experiences, his values, and his unwavering belief in human dignity and social justice.
So what does this all mean? What can we learn from this incredible journey through the life and work of Albert Einstein?
I think his story offers so many powerful insights. First, it reminds us that brilliance isn't always, immediately recognized. Einstein, he faced his share of setbacks and rejection, but his persistence, his insatiable curiosity, and his confidence in his own ideas, it ultimately prevailed. It's a valuable lesson for anyone pursuing their passions, especially in fields where, challenging the status quo is essential.
Yeah, it's inspiring to see how his story reminds us that even geniuses face obstacles, right?
Yeah.
And he never gave up on his ideas, and that's something we can all learn from.
Absolutely, yeah. And secondly, Einstein's life illustrates the profound impact that scientific discoveries can have on the course of human history, both for good and bad. His theories not only revolutionized our understanding of the universe, but also led to technologies that have shaped our world in profound ways.
From GPS navigation to the development of nuclear weapons, his legacy is it's both. It's awe-inspiring and cautionary. It underscores the tremendous responsibility that comes with scientific progress.
Precisely. And finally, I think Einstein's story is a powerful testament to the impact one person can have on the world. His unwavering commitment to pacifism, his advocacy for social justice, and his tireless efforts to promote, international cooperation. I mean, they all show that individuals can make a real difference, even in the face of overwhelming challenges.
It's a reminder that we each have a role to play in shaping a better future, whether through our work, our activism, or simply by living our lives with integrity and compassion.
Well said. Einstein's life was a rich tapestry of scientific brilliance, unyielding principles, and deep compassion. His story inspires us, challenges us, and prompts us to reflect on the power and responsibility that come with, knowledge, innovation, and the pursuit of a more just and peaceful world.
Yeah, and as we wrap up this deep dive, I keep coming back to one of his most famous quotes. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing.
Hmm.
I think that's a powerful message for us